Welcome, welcome, welcome to Late Night Learning. My name is Dr. Anthony Palomba. This is our inaugural episode. This is the first one that has ever been recorded here. I am so thankful that you are here joining me today. You're probably wondering, why is a PhD on my television right now? Aren't we kind of boring, a little bit dull? Maybe we belong in the classroom? I'm here to kind of break those barriers. So in this series, what we're going to be covering is everything to do with entertainment, public speaking, networking, and a whole host of other subjects. I cannot wait for you and I to kind of tackle all of this subject matter. And so a little bit about me before you decide to change the dial. My name is Dr. Anthony Palomba. I did my PhD at the University of Florida in entertainment marketing. I did my master's at the S.I. Newhouse Public School of Communications at Syracuse University in television, radio, and film. And I am a local. I did my undergrad at Manhattanville College, majoring in history and political science with a minor in economics. I've actually grown up in White Plains for my entire life. I did move up briefly to Yorktown, but I've since returned back down here to White Plains, ready to educate everyone on these particular subjects. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to go through entertainment and psychology. Now, this is kind of a really vague topic, but it does cover a lot. Have you ever wondered while you're driving down to some sort of movie theater, or if you're going to go watch some sort of TV show or play a video game, why am I doing this? There are a whole host of other things that I could be doing, but I'm choosing that. I'm not going to go ice skating. I'm not going to go see friends. I'm going to go consume media, or I'm going to go play media, or I'm going to do some sort of media engagement instead of talking to other people. In fact, there is a whole host of literature out there that kind of delves into this area, thinking about why consumers rely on media for a whole host of gratifications. This can include mood repair. This can include mood management. This can include cultivation theory and a whole host of other things that we'll be discussing today here on Late Night Learning. So if you look at the next slide, if you will, we can't really get too far into theory without understanding how it's created. This is just something that we kind of need to know, because otherwise we have kind of confusion that winds up manifesting if we don't know how we create theories. And so the first iteration of any kind of theory building is a fact. What is a fact? A fact is something like, well, this plant is green. This shirt is gray. A fact is something that is objectionably true. It is not subjective, it is objective. It is an absolute truth. Next, we have this idea of what a hypothesis is. And a hypothesis is some sort of relationship that we're going to test. So it could be the more one studies, the higher their grade. That's a hypothesis that you might look out to try to test. Moving on to the next word is theory. So a theory is this idea that we have this hypothesis, and it seems like every time Jennifer studies for 10 hours or for 15 hours, she gets a good grade. We also have another hypothesis that says that if Jennifer buys books and she studies from them, she also does well. So if she buys the textbooks for the particular class and reads them, she does well. Well, okay. Those are two hypotheses. If they keep being proven true, if we keep testing these, and they keep being supported, that students who study earn good grades, that students who open books and read them, mind you, read them, and do well on the exam, then it's clear that there's something going on here. And so what we can start developing is a theory to explain these processes. And so the theory might state that those who read and study well wind up getting good grades. That is your theory. The final piece of this, of course, is what a law is. So a law is some sort of statement that describes what is true. I'm wearing a watch here, if I drop my watch and I drop it on the ground, but it's $150, it's not happening. But if I did do that, and if it fell to the ground, that would be supporting the law of gravity, that anything that is dropped on planet Earth, because we have a certain amount of gravity here, will fall. It will always happen. Now, while a law is going to tell you what happens, it may not say why it happens. This is where theory comes into play. Theory helps describe why something is occurring. This is actually the foundation for what a lot of researchers do, for what a lot of PhDs do for that matter. And so when we're looking at hypotheses and facts and laws, we're trying to wrap our minds around how we came with all of this entertainment psychology, it really is the output and product of numerous studies by very, very tired and exhausted academics. I can assure you of that. So if we move on to the next slide, this is kind of an example of what all of this means, kind of a way for you to better understand what I'm getting at. So first we have a fact. Plants grow in sunlight, right? That's an objectionable truth. It's something that we probably know for sure, and it's also something that is absolutely clear. And so the research question might be, why do plants grow in sunlight? So if we think back 300 years, 500 years, our ancestors might have said, yeah, every time I plant this, things are growing. They're growing. I don't know. My grandfather did it. My father did it. I don't know. It's working. Frankly, we got to go farm. There are wolves in the woods. So we got to make sure that we have food. As a result, people start catching on to this concept. And so then we have the hypotheses that are offered here. So for instance, one hypothesis is plants will grow when there is a lot of sunlight. The second hypothesis is sunlight can help plants become healthier and stronger. Interesting. My crops are stronger when there is more light. And the third hypothesis, plants compete for sunlight in order to survive. Bundled together, we have a theory. We have the sunlight theory. Sunlight is necessary for plant growth and development because it helps energize internal processes. The final piece of this, of course, is if a law is developed from this body of knowledge. All plant life requires sunlight to survive. Now we know that there are exceptions to this, but if you kind of roll with me, this is almost an absolute law. It is something that cannot be unsupported. So that's kind of a basic overview of what theory building, fact building, law building is. It is certainly very dynamic, it is terribly complex, and it is definitely not something that we can go into 22 minutes. But it is at least an introduction into kind of what all of this means. So moving forward, if you see what is technology, this is kind of part of psychology and entertainment. And I say this because we rely on so much technology when we're going through media. I right now am blessed enough to be in a TV studio with a camera in front of me, mic'd up no less, and being recorded. Media heavily relies on technology. And so technology means art. It's a skilled craft. It's how things are gained. Logos, which is logic, the utterance by which inward thought is expressed. And so, if we can tie it all together, technology means art, some sort of skill or craft that we're developing. But it's through which inward thought is also expressed. And it's the study of this art, of this technology, and how humans innovate to inwardly express themselves. This is pretty profound. This is how we develop pop culture. This is how we have developed the way in which we watch television, how we understand television, radio, the internet, film. All of these different elements are populated because we have technology. So moving along, if you look at the next slide, you'll see motivations behind consumption. This is kind of interesting. The idea that we're motivated behind consumption. Take out your cell phone and tell me what your bank password is. I'm teasing. But look at your cell phone. You'll notice that you've actually organized your apps in a certain way. How weird. Where are your dating apps? You don't have to tell us. Where are your dating apps? Where's Bumble? Where's Tinder? Where's Coffee Meets Bagel? Where have you placed Facebook on your phone? Is it in the beginning? Or is it hidden? Where's Netflix? Do you have HBO Go? What about Hulu? These apps and the order in which you organize them is very telling about your motivation for consumption. Becomes kind of clear what's important. Becomes kind of clear what isn't important. And so combined together, you can quickly see you leave kind of a carbon footprint, if for nothing else, when you're using your phone. We subconsciously organize things, the things that are important to us. So looking back on motivation behind consumption, you'll see that consumption is really based on this paradigm that is called uses and gratifications. Uses and gratifications. We use media because we have anticipated gratifications. And so we might use media because we're bored. We might use media because we want to pass the time. We might use media for surveillance, and God knows we need it in the climate that we are in. We use media for surveillance, the idea that we are watching the news and trying to figure out what's going on here, what's going on there. Is there a hurricane? Is there a Trump? What's going on in today's news? We use surveillance so that we have a better picture of what's going on in the world. And so through all of this, we get to understand what's going on in our world. It goes far beyond simply being entertained and simply being informed. Now, differently, we have self-determination theory. We are all determined. We're all determined to get through this lecture. We are all determined to consume media for positive psychological well-being. What does that mean? We might consume particular bits and pieces of media because we're trying to manage ourselves internally. Now, there are 3 steps to the self-determination theory. The first step is autonomy. And this is this idea that you want to have some sort of autonomy when you're making this media consumption decision. Oh, I have an Xbox 360. I have this library of video games. I really would like to play Grand Theft Auto 5 or whatever the latest Halo video game is. And so I'm going to make that decision on my own. And so autonomy, making the decision on your own, is crucial. The other piece is competence. You need to be competent in this activity. So it's not just a matter of you saying, I can do this. It's you saying, I know that I can do this on my own. I'm going to individually pick the video game I want to play, but I'm competent. I know how to pick the right one. I know how to pick the best one, the funny one, the one that's action-packed. Whatever I am looking for, I can pick, and it's going to be damn good. And so the final piece of self-determination theory is relatedness. How many times do we like to post, share, and let other people know that we can cook a grilled cheese sandwich, that we can put together a salad, that we just got one of our tires changed? We love sharing things about ourselves. And so in this facet, we also like sharing our own media consumption experiences with people. Hey, Tiffany, I picked the perfect video game to play at my party Friday night. It was amazing. Everybody loved Mario Party 8. It was sick. People loved it. Had a great time. When all 3 of these are met, we have positive psychological well-being. We feel better. We're able to pick certain media to use. We can do it well, and we get the opportunity to share it with everyone else. Media is so incumbent upon us sharing our experiences. In particular, when we think of word of mouth, which is another piece of looking at motivations behind consumption. We love to be the first to watch something. We love to be the first to go talk to somebody about that thing. So it could very well be watching the latest Game of Thrones episode and saying, oh, God, I can't believe that that happened. I'm going to go tell somebody. I'm smart enough not to do any Game of Thrones spoiler alerts on this TV show, so you don't have to worry about that. Moving on to the next slide, we have how do we explain dependence on technology? We have a few things here. Technology acceptance model and the diffusion of innovation. These items consider the idea that some of us might be early adopters. Some of us might be later adopters for that purpose. So for instance, if Apple introduces the latest, iPhone for instance, this means that some people will adopt it early and will pay $800, and other people will adopt it late, perhaps paying $200. There is also this idea of technological determinism. And this is this idea that technology is kind of almost determining our society. It's almost pushing our society in a particular direction. That technology at certain points kind of takes over and things become a little bit more automated, which is kind of fascinating when we think about how far we've come. Think about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, if you were alive back then, maybe you were just being born, or maybe you weren't even a thought or care on this planet. Anyway, if in fact you were around, you may be surprised, or those of you who may not have been around, you may be surprised to know that in fact there were no cell phones, there was no internet. In fact, if you wanted to go play with a friend, you probably called his house, his mother picked up the phone, you had to tell her that you wanted to go play baseball or something, when really you were going to go light fireworks in an alleyway or something like that. And so that kind of speed in which phones, smartphones, tablets, and other kinds of new media have entered into the foray of our own kind of social norm has really sped up life. Think about how quickly it can be to just make a plan now. It takes literally seconds. It doesn't take that long. Our phones kind of keep up with us, but really we've kind of reached this point in which phones are kind of outpacing us. And in fact, we're the ones who are racing and trying to run and really keep up with the amount of information and alerts and other things that are constantly sent to us and registered with us. If you look at the next slide that we have here, we have exposure to content. Now, I know that these are three different Jokers, and I think that this villain is perfect to kind of help exemplify this particular content. And so if we think about the mere exposure factor says, if one is merely exposed to something, we actually might start liking it. Kind of a bizarre concept, but think about the last time you were in a car and you heard the latest Miley Cyrus song or the latest Jonas Brothers song. I don't know. Something that you just roll your eyes and you're like, for the love of Christ, can they just pick something different? It sucks. But it's kind of catchy now, and I've heard it a few times, and I don't know. I guess it's kind of growing on me because I'm exhausted. Mere exposure says that if we are exposed to enough advertisements, enough times, we start building trust with it. The same crappy song, the same crappy commercial. If we keep seeing it, it's very possible that we might start enjoying it. However, there are of course limitations with this and exceptions. There are certain things that just annoy the hell out of us, and there's really nothing that we can do about it. No matter how much we watch it, listen to it, digest it, we just can't get our minds around it, and we wind up not really liking it. Kind of like relatives' food at a holiday dinner. No matter how many times we try our grandmother's dessert, it's still crappy. There's nothing we can do. Mere exposure cannot get us out of that. If we keep looking onto that particular slide, there's also classical conditioning and the reaction to pairing of stimuli. So this is very, very unique because classical conditioning has really worked out well with media, in particular with TV themes. You know, we might hear, something like, the Seinfeld kind of bass guitar, right? The dun-dun-dun-dun. So we kind of know that means that the show is about to start. We know that these particular show themes signify the show's about to start, time to get ready. And so it conditions us to pair the theme music with the show. The show is kind of the unstimulated factor there, and the theme song is the stimulation factor there. So this is really interesting because you wind up creating meanings very quickly, in fact. And so a theme song for TV, one, it's to get ready, it's to get excited, and we kind of need that actually. We need that because what winds up happening is we sit down, we're ready for the TV show, popcorn's there, everybody is here. It gives us a few seconds to go right into the world. To go right into the world that we're about to enter. Could be The Simpsons, The Office, Big Bang Theory, Modern Family, Blackish, Off the Boat. It could be a whole host of different shows. But that classical conditioning primes us to get ready to digest the particular show. It's almost like kind of going to a restaurant. You have an appetizer, then you have the main course. The theme song for a TV show is kind of like an appetizer. If we continue to look on to that particular PowerPoint, the last thing we have is excitation transfer. This idea that we can view something in television and we can have excitement. There's this idea of a buildup. There's this idea of anticipation. There's this idea that something's going to happen. We're excited, and it happens, and we're like, whoa. So this idea of excitation transfer helps us digest pieces of TV content that are intriguing to us, that help build up anticipation, and we feel the excitement within the TV show. It's literally transferred to us. Looking at the next slide that we have here, perception, memory, and processing. I really love this slide. I'll just read it to you. So the mother is behind the child who is watching a TV show full of stars, planets, and probably violence and other awful conduct. And so the mother says, if you keep watching that violence, your head is going to explode, splattering your mushy brains all over my nice carpet. The son, not even turning his head around, says, cool. Of course it's cool. We gravitate to sex and violence, unfortunately, but we've been doing this ever since recorded history and probably before. Cultivation theory is one of the major theories here that gets at our own perception and memory processing about the entire environment. Cultivation theory says if we watch the 10 o'clock news and if we keep seeing that it is African Americans and Hispanic Americans that are committing murders, we start to believe that African Americans and Hispanic Americans, we start to believe that African Americans and Hispanic Americans are committing murders. And this has been written about at great length because news stations tend to be selective with the kind of crime stories that they share. So we have to be careful here. If we keep showing that it's African American after African American who's committing murders, people begin to cultivate certain perceptions of reality. Oh, don't go into that neighborhood. There are a lot of African Americans there, and I keep seeing a lot of crime on the 10 o'clock news. Whereas there might be other crimes that are committed within a town that are committed by other races, could be females, could be male, it could be other kinds of people profiles. But the problem is that the news station might highlight or underscore certain crimes that are being committed in a community. This is an issue and it's been written about at great length. And so it's very difficult to diffuse or dissolve or erode anybody's perception of reality. It's kind of cultivated through watching the news, for instance, and that's one thing that can be done. Another thing is New York City, for instance. So there are so many romance comedies that are always talking about how beautiful New York City is. You get to kind of see parts of it. Us as New Yorkers realize that the bulk of where these movies are shot are around Central Park and good parts of Manhattan. They're not looking at Queens, they're not even looking at Brooklyn, and the rest of New York is not comprised of apartment buildings. We have houses here, we have other things. But because people constantly see New York City in romance comedies, it makes sense that they feel this way. Looking back at that slide, you can also see social identity theory. Social identity theory states that we kind of look at characters, we kind of look at other people as members in a group. So if you were watching the Jersey Shore, if you ever watched The Real Housewives of Atlanta, New York, or what have you, you very well might see yourself as part of that group. Perhaps you watch the Jersey Shore to learn how to do your hair gel just right, if you're trying to live that Guido or Guidette lifestyle. It could be that maybe you're watching The Real Housewives of New Jersey or New York or Atlanta or Los Angeles or Orange County because you're trying to live perhaps as those women are living. When we subscribe to this idealistic lifestyle, it could be you want to mimic the lifestyle of some of the Guidos or self-proclaimed Guidettes on the Jersey Shore, you might learn to adopt that lifestyle. It becomes a how-to manual. And so social learning theory, which is also related to this, is this idea that you really don't need other people around you, teachers and other people. It's not really necessary. We kind of learn just by digesting media. We kind of learn by getting involved in the kind of content that is being produced to us. We learn so much from consuming media. We learn so much from just listening to the radio or watching a TV show. If you go through the next slide that we have here, we have consumer behavior and perception. And so sensations are particularly important here when we're going through consumer behavior and perception. For instance, there is a theory called mood management theory, this idea that we actively manage our moods. If we're having a crappy day, well, we might go listen to a sad song that might make us feel better, or we'll listen to a happy song that'll make us feel better. Sensations are really important to note because the way that we touch, taste, hear, and listen to media are critical. The way that we visualize media as well is incredibly critical. Sensory marketing is another facet of consumer perception. And so when we're thinking about how we can stimulate our senses, this also delves into something known as virtual reality. I was wearing a headset not too long ago playing Resident Evil 7, and it was frightening. The headset itself is about 15 pounds. So you're in this world. You have the virtual reality headset on, which helps put you into the game. And so I'm going around and I can hear the drips and drabs of other monsters that are around me, and I'm freaking out, I'm panicking. You think that you're conscious and that there's no way that I'm going to buy any of this because I know it's fake. But the virtual reality system is geared to manipulate your senses. And so I'm walking around, I'm going around looking and looking and looking, and sure enough, a monster kind of spins towards me, and I'm like, ah! And then I just kind of fall to the floor like a toddler, like a 5-year-old. I promise you that the decibel I hit was way higher than that, and I have not hit that decibel since puberty. So it was terribly embarrassing, needless to say, and this was in front of other people. But the point is that virtual reality is a kind of sensory marketing device. It helps titillate and stimulate your senses. My sight was taken from me, hearing was taken from me by putting on this headset. So I want to thank you so much for joining me on this inaugural episode. I did it, we did it, and I look forward to having you back here again for Late Night Learning. As always, keep laughing and keep learning.